and welcome back to another chapter in the SkyBlue Studios tutorial series. In a previous tutorial, we looked at how to create an extremely simple blueprint door system that opened when you got near it. In response to a request to update this tutorial with more functionality, we will be looking at a new bidirectional interactable door that allows you to open it in either direction, using the very simple interaction blueprint communication interface that we created in another previous tutorial. In this tutorial, however, we will not be going through how to make it from scratch, but instead we will be looking at the system that I have made off camera, as I would like to find out which tutorial format you viewers prefer. You can vote in a quick poll in this video's cards, which you can see in the top right of the video. So the first thing I want to do is show off the working blueprint. So if I just press play, then you'll see that if I walk over to this door over here and I left click, it opens. If I walk out and left click on it again, it closes. And the same from either direction, so you can see it opens in the other direction now. So it's very simple and it works very well. But yes, so I will be showing it to you already made in this tutorial. So let's just open up the blueprint tutorial, which I've called BiDoor. And you can see we have a few things here. We have two variables and a couple of functions. But let's just look at the event graph first. So Door Interact is a custom event that is called by the interaction interface. So we created this in a previous tutorial, and it's a piece of blueprint logic called an interface. You can look at the tutorial, previous tutorial to see what it is. But basically, we use the called interface function, which is called interact, and we just call our event because we need to use a timeline, which requires it moves over time, and you can't do things over time in a function. So inside this interaction function, we just call the event, the custom event. So then this gets called here, and we check whether or not is open is true. So this is getting the variable is open, and it's saying if it is not true, then do that, and if it is true, then do that, because this not inverts the value. So you just want to create a boolean variable called isOpen. You can call it whatever you want, of course, but I call it isOpen. And you just have it set up like this. This just allows us to decide whether to open or close the door. So if it is not open, so if it is not open, which is true, then we set it to open, and we set the direction. This is the most complicated part of the blueprint, really. This figures out the direction that we need to rotate the door, because it plays this timeline, which is like an animation, but it's created programmatically. We need to figure out which direction we want the door to open, which is opposite from the player. Obviously, you can change this around slightly to make it open towards the player if you want. So basically, what we do is we get the player pawn, and we get its location. We subtract that from this blueprint's location. And I should show you the blueprint. If you look on the viewport of the blueprint, it is centered in the very center of the door. That's how it's set up in here. So it gets the location, and it gets the player location, and it subtracts them, and that gives you a direction. When you subtract two vectors, it gives you the direction from one to the other. And then we need to unrotate the vector based on this actor's rotation. And what this does is it gets the direction, and then it basically rotates it around and removes the rotation of this blueprint that you're calling it from. So what we do is we get the direction, then we basically subtract this this door's rotation, and this allows us to get whether or not the player is looking through the door one way or looking through it the opposite way. So we can tell if it's which direction the player is looking in relative to the door. And then we check if the return value x is more than 0. And what this does is the return value, this is a vector, the return value x is telling us positive means that we're facing one way, and negative means we're facing the other way, because this will be positive and negative based on that value, because it's x, and x is the forward vector of all blueprints. So we set the direction based off that, and then we play the animation. This animation is very simple. It's just a little nice smooth curve, and you can create smooth curves by creating the points like you usually would with shift clicking. And then you can, if you shift click, then you can right click and you can change the interpolation. By default it's linear, which means you'll get a linear animation, which is very basic and bad looking. You can also see I've got the duration as 1.4 seconds because it seems to be a pretty good time length for this sort of animation. And what we do is we use the alpha, which is what I've called that value that is going from 0 to 1. we use that alpha to lerp, which allows us to, it smoothly transitions between value A and value B based on alpha is 0 to 1. So it smoothly lerps between 0, which is the door closed, to 90 or negative 90, which is the rotation of the door when it's open. And it chooses which of those directions is correct based on this, based on the direction that we've already figured out what it is. So if you wanted to change the direction the door opens, you could change it here to make that less than 0, or you could change it here and just switch that to negative 90 and switch that to positive 90, and that will change the direction the door opens. And then we just use this value to change the rotation of this door mesh here, which is just the door itself, because I've got the door frame around it. We just change the rotation of that mesh component between the lerp value that we just set up, and so this makes it look like it's opening and or closing. And the when we want to close the door, which is what we're doing here, which is if isOpen is true, because we're using a not, so it means that it goes false if it is true. Then we set the door to being closed now, and then we just play this animation reverse. And because this is all set up easily, if we reverse it, it just reverses the door's animation and just closes it. So it's very simple in the way it works. And with the player, because I didn't have the interaction set up with the player clicking buttons before, it was just with a trigger. In the player, what I've done is I've just, on top of the remove health logic that we've placed in a previous tutorial, I've just gotten a line trace for objects. So this is this shoots out like an imaginary line in front of the player and checks for collision with different objects. So you can see we just get the camera location, because if you use the pawn's location, then it will be not at the camera's height, so it can lead to some weird behavior if you use the pawn, not the camera. So you get the location of that, and you set that as the start, because we want to start the camera. And then we want to get the forward vector of the camera, which will give us the vector as a normalized vector, so the maximum value of any of the vector components will be 1. We times it by 250, so this will be the length of the check in centimeters. So we're checking for 2.5 meters in front of the player, if there's a door there, in this case. And then what we need to do is we need to add this vector, because this is just the direction, a direction of magnitude 250. We need to add this to the camera's location, and we set that as the end, so therefore it goes from the camera's location to the camera's location plus 250 centimeters in the forward direction of the camera. And then for object types, you have to tell it what types of collision you want to interact with. We're using world static and world dynamic. If you don't use world static, then it will ignore world static. So if there's a door behind a wall, but you press the button and the wall is a static object, then it will just hit the door anyway. So you need to have more than just the one you want to interact with. And then after we've interacted, we check if the actor that we've hit does implement the interface interact, which is what we've created in the previous tutorial again. And if it does, then we call the interact function. And due to the way that interfaces work, this can be called on anything. So this doesn't just work for the door. If we created any other blueprints like a light bulb or anything like that, this would also have the same effect. It would allow us to turn it off and on or anything based off just this single bit of code here, which is it's a very useful thing to use in games. But yeah, so that's how it works. And as I've already showed you, if we press play, then you left click and it opens, just like I showed you. So that concludes this tutorial on UE4. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and subscribe if you want to see more. Bye.